Under the same moon, we share the love. Embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world share in love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. We have so much dominating news to cover, especially when it comes to the President of the United States, also with Epstein. Like, what's really happening? Everybody wants to know. First off the top, we're going to get started with none other than Todd Blanche being pressed with hard questions in regards to the releasing of the Epstein files. Let's get right to it.
Here with me now is Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I want to start with the Epstein files. Elon Musk, who is mentioned in some of these files, wrote, quote, "What matters is not the release of some subset of Epstein files, but rather the prosecution of those who committed heinous crimes with Epstein. When there is at least one arrest, some justice will have been done. If not, this is all performative, nothing but a distraction." Is the Department of Justice considering bringing any additional charges here?
Well, look, I can't talk about any investigations, but I will say
Elon Musk is mentioned, obviously, in the Epstein files, but he makes a good point. Where is all of this heading? You know, what's the big deal? If we're just looking at files and there's no charges coming, what's the big deal?
following, which is that in July, the Department of Justice said that we had reviewed the files, the quote Epstein files, and there was nothing in there that allowed us to prosecute anybody. We then released over 3.5 million pieces of paper, which the entire world can look at now and see if we got it wrong. And so it's not performative, and I respectfully disagree with that statement.
So you mean to tell me they go and they arrest Don Lemon for going into a church and trying to cover a story, right? Very debatable from both sides because he was interrupting a religious service. They arrest him, but they can't find anything wrong in the Epstein files. Like, what's really going on? Let's say that one more time. He said they can't find anything enough to arrest someone in the Epstein files. What in the world?
Ordered to do so by Congress and then by the President of the United States, and that's what we did. And let me, I said it on Friday. This Justice Department, the FBI, DHS, we have gone after more sex traffickers, more child pornographers, more men who have done harm to children and young women than any administration in history. And so we need to.
Guys, hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much.
Separate those two ideas, the fact that there's the Epstein files and whether there's anybody there that we can go after, and the work that we are doing every day, which is extraordinary, and we will continue to do that.
Among these new files is a list compiled by the FBI just in August of numerous salacious and, to be really clear, unverified allegations about President Trump. Why did the FBI create this list last year, and have all of these claims been investigated by the DOJ?
So look, it's not about President Trump. It's about a ton of people, multiple people that were, quote, in the Epstein files. And what I think folks will see when they review the materials we released is that there have been hundreds of calls made to the FBI where allegations are made by either anonymous individuals or people who are very quickly determined to not be credible, whether it's the nature of what they're saying or the fact they won't provide any information or corroboration. And that's part of the Epstein files.
I do want to move on. Former CNN anchor Don Lemon and another journalist, Georgia Fort, were arrested on Friday on charges they violated federal law during a tense protest at a Minnesota church.
Now, I just want to give you a little history on Todd Blanche. Here in New York, when I attended Donald Trump's trial, Todd Blanche was his attorney, his personal attorney. Then, when Donald Trump became president, he pulled him into the administration and made him the AG, right? So that gives you an idea that he has been solving problems for the president for quite some time. Also, when the whole dilemma came up with Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, Todd Blanche went to meet with her and kind of made sure that everything was intact. And then she was moved to a more pleasant prison, if there is such a thing. So that gives you an idea of the history. You could research it.
A conservative federal judge, somebody who clerked for Antonin Scalia, already had rejected those warrants and wrote that there is no evidence that those two engaged in any criminal behavior or conspired to do so. Then an appeals.
Okay, Pretty Ting says because Trump is the president, they can't arrest him, but they can impeach him, which they've done quite many times before, right?
Court held up that decision. Why did you then bring this case to a grand jury after it already had been rejected by multiple judges?
So first of all, that appeals court, you're not right. The appeals court,
I see quite a few are talking about politics. We're going to get to the elections that are coming up, and we're going to look at some of the polls before the show is over, so stay tuned.
a judge on the appeals court said that there was clearly probable cause. There was absolutely probable cause that a crime had been committed. Okay, so it's true
By
that they
journalists?
rejected the mandamus petition, but yes, by Mr. Lemon and others, it's public. And so, yes, you're right. A judge in that court had said there wasn't probable cause. But guess what? Our system doesn't allow judges to make that decision. They can make that decision to get an arrest warrant on a complaint, but only a grand jury can bring forth an indictment. And so that's what we did. We went to a grand jury, which, as you know, are 25 citizens from Minneapolis and around that decide whether there's probable cause. And that's who returned an indictment.
Mr. Blanche, I want to go, actually, I went through the entire indictment, all 29 alleged overt acts of conspiracy. And there's a lot to ask you about, but I'm just going to pick a few here, okay? Starting with overt act number 20, which says, quote, defendant Lemon told his live stream audience about congregants leaving the church and about a young man who Lemon could see was frightened, scared, and crying. And Lemon observed that the congregants' reactions were understandable because the experience was traumatic and uncomfortable, which he said was the purpose.
This is going to be a real problem for Don Lemon. I don't care how many attorneys you have. This is going to be a problem because they're definitely going to try to put the screws to him. The tough part is he has a great platform and he talks about Donald Trump all the time. And we know that the president has been turning the table on many people. We have Letitia James, we have James Comey, we have John Bolton, and the list goes on and on. So when you operate from that standpoint, you cannot put yourself in the hands of the president because they were determined to get charges on Don Lemon, and we saw how this has played out. Make no mistakes, we're not crazy. We see what's happening, but when you are at that level, you have to make sure you don't just walk easily into a trap to where you could lose your freedom.
Overt Act 21 says, quote, as the operation continued, defendant Lemon acknowledged the nature of it by expressing surprise that the police hadn't yet arrived at the church and admitted knowing that the whole point of the operation was to disrupt. Why wouldn't a jury at trial see this as a journalist observing what is happening, which is protected by the First Amendment?
Now, notice his answer. This is very important.
Well, you conveniently left out multiple allegations in that indictment about what else Mr. Lemon did, including surreptitiously avoiding saying where they were going, being part of the planning, being part of the decisions to make sure the police didn't know this was happening and federal law enforcement didn't know this is happening. There are multiple allegations there. And guess what? He gets to have a lawyer and he gets to have a defense. And so if he wants to go forward with the defense that, oh, shucks, I was just a journalist, he can do that. But obviously, as the indictment lays out, and which you didn't read on the air, there's a lot of things that Mr. Lemon did that you would never do as a journalist. You would never do that.
Okay, let's see here. Michael says, this guy Blanche needs to be disbarred. No ethics, multiple conflicts of interest, lies, lies, lies. Thank you for your participation, Michael.
Okay,
Let's be honest.
This is not about me. This is about what happened, and this is about kind of the rules of the road. I mean, there are many.
but
there are
journalistic
let me
standards
finish my
matter.
question. Let me finish my question, and then you have the floor.
Peter asked a good question. He said, do you really believe Trump is going to pardon them when he's constantly attacking him and still talking smack about him? Great question. Thank you. We have New Jersey in the building. Thank you for your hard work. Vado is here. Good morning to you as well. Good afternoon. Okay, very good. Let's keep rolling.
There are countless examples of when reporters are embedded with people, with DOD, where we are told not to tell anybody where we're going. There are numerous examples of when we.
For those of you who are just coming in, this is Todd Blanche. This is Donald Trump's Attorney General, used to be his personal attorney. He's answering hard questions right now in regards to Don Lemon.
Get embargoed information that we can't report from your agency, for example, and that has happened on with presidents in both parties, and we withhold reporting.
Guys, can we get at least 100 likes? Thank you very much, and subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you.
Until you say it's time to report it. That's not unusual, and it's not unlike what happened with Don Lemon and Georgia Ford.
Well, listen, you are totally correct that happens every day, and it's happened for decades. But if you watch what Mr. Lemon did, okay, and I do not want to have a trial right here. It's not fair to him. But I will say that if you watch the publicly available live streaming that he engaged in, the comments that he made, I mean, that's what it matters, right? It matters, like, how do we balance the FACE Act? How do we balance freedom of...
So here's the dilemma that I see, guys. I went to Sean Diddy Combs' trial every day for 9 weeks, right? And in essence, the feds ended up with egg on their face because they wasn't able to close the deal in regards to Sean Diddy Combs. I think this time around, because they've been losing, they're going to try to seal the deal on Don Lemon. Now, what does that look like? We don't know. But when you have the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General talking about it on the media, seems to be every day, it's almost like his name is on the line along with Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. They're going to look to seal the deal on Don Lemon for interrupting church service, and they're going to use the whole love of God, love of religion and worship to try to close it in on him. Watch.
Religion, the right of people to worship on a Sunday morning, okay, and the freedom of the press, and it's a balance that we have to engage in. I agree with you, but my point to you is that I promise you that neither you nor your colleagues.
Deborah has made a great observation. She says, reading his body language, he's not really comfortable with the questions and his facial expressions. Quite well. Thank you, Deborah.
Can honestly, with a straight face, if you watch everything that he did in the day before with the planning and the day of with what happened.
So you guys hear that? This is the Deputy Attorney General. He knows Don Lemon's action just like a game, like a play, and he's breaking down the facts. This is going to be a real problem for Don Lemon.
The comments he made while the kids were crying and screaming and racing away, while the parents were looking for their children upstairs.
But he doesn't
while they were just trying to have a church service.
Okay. Bottom line question for you is, was this really about what you just described, or was it about trying to make an example out of somebody who the president has sparred with?
Put a 1 in the chat if you think they're trying to make an example out of Don Lemon. Put a 2 if you think no, they're just going by the law. Put a 1 or a 2.
I don't even know that the president's even ever thought of Don Lemon. I don't know whether that's true or not. But I will tell you, we're not making examples of people. The day after that happened, the Attorney General flew to Minneapolis. She was there for 3 days. What we saw, there is no scenario under which the American people are comfortable or think that was right. I'm sorry. So no, it's not about making an example. It's about justice.
I want to move on. But the White House, on the official Twitter handle, celebrated his arrest with the...
Okay, most people feel like they're going by the law. They're not trying to make an example out of Don Lemon. Okay, and thank you guys. An overwhelming amount of response. It's amazing to see all the support for News at Noon. I really do appreciate it. Let's keep going.
Media and a chain emoji, and it's pretty clear that they're very well aware in the White House of this. I want to ask about Georgia.
No, I didn't say they weren't aware. Wait. Hold on one second.
And
I didn't say they weren't aware.
That was afterwards.
You said that. No. You said that President Trump had some vendetta or something against Mr. Lemon. I said I don't know whether he even ever thought of Mr. Lemon. I have no idea.
Yesterday,
You're right.
He called
there
him
was
a sleazebag.
a tweet that went out.
Just so you know, he called him a sleazebag just yesterday.
Walter says Don Lemon is his own worst enemy. Okay. OG says 300 plus in the building. Get the likes up. Thank you very much, guys. I really do appreciate it. All right. Frank says bias sheeple. All right.
After his arrest.
Okay. You said a lot of things before that, and it's mutual. But let me move on to Georgia. Earlier this week, the FBI went into the elections office in Fulton County, Georgia, to seize 2020 ballots, voter rolls, scanner images. And the president told reporters, quote, they got into the votes. You're going to see some interesting things happening. What interesting things is he talking?
Okay, so before we get started with Georgia, which they're going to talk about next, who do you think about that went after Donald Trump before he became the president for the second time? Who in Georgia was going after him? They have a person already on the ticket as the defendant in a sealed case that's going to be more than likely prosecuted. Who do you think that person is going to be? Let's do a little history search here.
Talking about, and why was he so involved in an FBI and DOJ raid?
Well, just because he said that doesn't mean that he's involved. I don't believe he was involved.
Okay, Heaven says Fannie. Yes, Fannie Willis, and also her counterpart. What was his name? Tell us, folks.
This is a criminal grand jury investigation, and I can't comment on it beyond what you just said, which is that there was a search warrant that was authorized by a federal judge, by a magistrate judge in Atlanta, that allowed us to go and seize those records, and they have been seized by the FBI as part of an ongoing criminal investigation.
He said interesting things are happening, so it sounds like he was briefed on it.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not around when the president's briefed or not briefed. What I've said is that this is a criminal investigation, so it's a tightly held, as it must be under the law. It's a grand jury investigation, and that's how we're proceeding.
What are they investigating?
As you know, we can't talk about specifics of any grand jury investigation. I will tell you, as I said on Friday, as the president has said, election integrity is of the highest importance to the American people, hopefully to everybody in this country, Democrats and Republicans alike. And so we are doing everything we can to make sure that we have free and fair elections.
Okay. And as you well know, that when it comes to Georgia, claims of voter fraud there, because they got the 2020 ballots, have been debunked over and over.
Well, somebody is about to be prosecuted to the max, and I think we know who it is. Although the person's name is sealed, it's a shame when people in high authority get prosecuted. But anyway, let's move on. There are some issues coming up with the president of the United States that people are questioning a deal. Let's get to it.
New corruption allegations against President Trump tonight, a bombshell. New report exposes a secret deal between the Trump family and an Abu Dhabi role known as the Spy Sheikh. The Wall Street Journal reporting, quote, 4 days before Donald Trump's inauguration last year, lieutenants to an Abu Dhabi role secretly signed a deal with the Trump family to purchase a 49% stake in their cryptocurrency venture for $500 million. At least $31 million was also slated to flow to entities affiliated with the family of Steve Witkoff, who is a World Liberty co-founder and had just been named the U.S. envoy to the Middle East. Joining us now is Sam Kessler, one of the Wall Street Journal reporters behind the story. Sam, the magnitude of this story and the scope of the deal and the reporting, there is just so much there. Can you just walk us through what actually went down here?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It is dense, and I appreciate you nodding at that. I think you did a pretty good job in the overview there, but just to go back a little bit. So my colleagues and I, Rebecca Ballhaus, Angus Berwick, and Elliot Brown, we broke this story last night. It's about a deal that happened just 4 days before the inauguration, like you mentioned last year, where the Trump family made a deal with a UAE royal, Sheikh Tahnoon, known as the Spy Sheikh. in exchange for 49% of their cryptocurrency company, World Liberty Financial. And the deal was worth $500 million with money flowing to those entities you mentioned, including entities associated with the Trump family and his, at that point, incoming envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. It's crazy not just because of the scale of the deal. Those figures are obviously pretty massive, even by the standards of, other deals we've been hearing about in this.
So here we have more corruption on Donald Trump, but I guarantee you it won't go anywhere. They keep digging up this stuff, but it appears that the president is above all of these allegations. And as we've seen in the past, it's just a waste of time.
Administration, but it's also pretty extraordinary in terms of the timing. A big thing here is that Sheikh in addition to being a royal and brother to the president of the UAE, is also that country's national security advisor, and he's been tasked with securing AI chips for the UAE. And he also oversees a portfolio of worth $1.3 trillion. It's pretty crazy, but basically, after this deal was signed, just within a few months, Sheikh Tahnoun's own company, G42, was granted access to these highly, highly coveted, very advanced U.S. AI chips. So just the timing there has been a real focus of the reporting.
Can you just elaborate a little bit on the significance of that? So it sounds like, if I'm understanding you correctly, the tit for tat or the quid pro quo, whatever, the things that happened coincidentally, shall we say, were that Trump made a lot of money, and
I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, but it's very difficult for anyone to contest Donald Trump at this point. You don't even have an entity or a person strong enough to really hold him to the mat. Remember, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer was really on his case on the first time around, but the second time around, you don't even see that. In fact, he's the most powerful guy in the entire world, right? You might as well face it. So you could ponder about these type of stories all day long, but nobody's going to stop him.
UAE got access to a lot of these AI chips. Would they have gotten that access otherwise? I know you're not a national security advisor for the U.S., but would that have been deemed to be
any indication, perhaps, that this deal was going to happen regardless?
Okay, we have a good question here. The Sun says, I have a question. So if this was Obama, would you still feel the same way, or would you feel differently? Just a question. If it was Obama, he'd be locked up. That's just the hardcore truth. We might as well face the facts. I'm just giving it to you straight. He would be in such hot water, and he would not have the people rallying enough behind him to the extent that Donald Trump has such power that we have not seen before, and they'll probably have to rewrite the books.
This was in the United States' interest, that this would have happened absent that deal.
So I definitely can't state whether this deal was the factor that led to this chip deal, the latter deal being made. But what I can say is that under the Biden administration, the UAE and in specific Tahnoun's empire, this company G42 in particular, was blocked from access to.
All right, so we're going to move on. I'm going to show you a good example of the power of the president. Let's get right to it with the Kennedy Center. Just sit back and pay attention. Watch this.
This morning, it appears the Kennedy Center in Washington could be taking a long intermission, possibly closing for 2 years beginning July 4th, pending board approval. President Trump announcing the iconic arts complex will undergo construction, calling it tired, broken, and in bad condition. The move comes after Trump's hand-picked board named him chairman, then changed the name to the Trump Kennedy Center. Several performers have since canceled, including composer Philip Glass, soprano Renee Fleming, a touring group of Hamilton, and the Washington National Opera ended its 50-year affiliation with the venue. Overnight, members of the Kennedy family reacting. Maria Shriver, a niece of John F. Kennedy, writing a satirical translation of Trump's announcement, saying, "It's been brought to my attention that entertainers are canceling left and right, and I have determined that since the name change, no one wants to perform there any longer." Meanwhile, there's...
So what kind of position does this put Robert Kennedy in as he's a part of the administration? I can guarantee you that the Thanksgiving table must be pretty uncomfortable, right? What is his position? You can obviously see that some of the family members are agitated, but Donald Trump is changing the names and also putting his name on so many things. But hey, he can do that.
Growing scrutiny of President Trump and his family's business. The Wall Street Journal reports the Trump family's cryptocurrency firm, World Liberty Financial,
I want you guys to produce one name, one individual, or a nation that's going to stop Donald Trump. I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon.
sold nearly half the company, a 49% stake, to a member of the Emirati royal family before Trump's inauguration. That investment made the Trump family business partners with the United Arab Emirates, even as Trump shapes foreign policy in the region. Months later, the Trump administration approved a deal to send highly coveted American AI computer chips to the UAE, raising concern among ethics experts.
Of course, there's a conflict. Why is Donald Trump focused on enriching himself, his family, and his friends, as opposed to focused on driving down the high cost of living?
World Liberty Financial says President Trump had no involvement
Unirock says, God bless Trump. Okay.
in the transaction, saying any claim that this deal had anything to do with the administration's actions on chips is 100% false. And the White House says the president has no involvement in business deals that would implicate his constitutional responsibilities. Some experts have voiced concern about the UAE obtaining American AI chips, fearing they could get into the hands of the Chinese.
Okay. Maximum says Trump is a loser. Okay. All right. TYT says, is he enriching himself and his friends just like y'all did? Okay. All right. Okay, so now we're going to move on, and we're going to check out Trump takes a major step here. I want to show you guys what's happening.
Cuba's a failing nation. It has been for a long time, but now it doesn't have Venezuela to prop it up. So we're talking to the people from Cuba, the highest people in Cuba.
So recently I was in court with Maduro. I was sitting about 4 rows behind him. And we kind of know what happened with him being arrested. In court, he said he was kidnapped, but we do know that Venezuela has a strong relationship with Cuba because the Cubans were actually protecting Maduro, and I believe 32 of them, their lives were taken when Maduro was taken out of the country. Well, at any rate, Donald Trump is also, he has his eyes on Cuba. And that's what we're going to examine here.
We'll see what happens. I want the people that came here that were horribly treated by Cuba to be taken care of, to be able to go back and do what they have to do. You know, they have their family there. They haven't been able to see them in years, many, many years. So I think we're going to make a deal with Cuba.
The Don Roe doctrine in action. President Trump turning his attention to Cuba, hopeful they can make a deal. It comes as he is set to meet with Colombian President Gustavo Petro this week after months of tense exchanges. Fox Noticias host Andrea Linares joins us now. Andrea, thank you so much for joining.
You know, Colombia was really pushing back. The president was pushing back on the United States, but you notice now he's meeting with Donald Trump. That's a good course of action because we saw what happened to Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. So it does pay to, I guess, fall in line.
Us. So when it comes to Cuba, the president just signed an executive order imposing tariffs on countries that supply oil to Cuba. So how significant
David says Trump will make Cuba great again. All right.
is this?
This is huge. And first of all, good morning and thank you so much for having me. But this is very important news. Why? Because according to analysts right now, Cuba has about 15 to 20 days of oil supply left.
Wow.
Let's just remember, they're just running dry. They lost that lifeline from Venezuela. They have allies like Russia and Algeria that they're basically taking a hands-off approach. We are not committing to sending any sort of aid. And then you also have Mexico. They stopped oil shipments to Cuba. So they don't have much. The situation there is just like, according to some experts, it's really turning into a catastrophic situation. Of course, we don't want a humanitarian crisis, but some Cuban Americans here are actually hopeful that this could lead to a total collapse.
Yeah, you know, I was going to ask you about that. Do you have any insight into what Cuban or Cuban Americans feel about this?
Well, there is some level of concern inside the island.
The president joked that Marco Rubio could be running Cuba. I think his heritage is there, so that's something to look out for, right?
A nation of about 8 million people. Some of them say, well, all these actions may just mean more hardship for the Cuban people, while the government, well, they're not going to be affected.
Guys, hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Let's try to hit 100 likes. Thank you.
But I believe perhaps if they're just so fed up and they're brave enough to take to the streets and
Shout out to you, Kennedy. Nice to have you here.
Protests, it could lead to some change. I know someone that periodically sends money to family in Cuba. She spoke to her father and said, how are you doing? And she said, well, he tells me, you know, we've gone through so much already. It's been so many decades of facing this hardship that we're ready if this means a potential change.
Wow, so they would want to see that, some Cubans.
They want a free Cuba.
What would an America First deal look like? I mean, that's what President Trump ultimately wants.
Well, that's the big question. We heard President Trump yesterday saying we are working on a deal and we're talking to some high-level officials. We don't know the specific details, right? It's very vague right now, but there's hope. And there's something that really struck me, Republican Congressman Carlos Jimenez.
Now, a lot of people do not like Donald Trump. I truly understand that. But when was the last time you've seen a president making such assertions throughout the world and forcing his hand and making all of these deals on record, right? When was the last time you've seen that?
As he said, you know, the situation in Cuba, it's like a cancer. And to treat it, it may take time and there's pain, but it's to save lives. And I really like that comparison because that's what may be the situation for Cuba in order to save the island nation.
Well, this was all sparked by the ousting of Nicolas Maduro. And Venezuela, we're learning, has just released additional political prisoners. But interim President Delcy Rodriguez is also being accused of slow-walking human rights reforms. And then there's this Wall Street Journal headline saying Venezuela's new leader, referring to Delcy Rodriguez, is trying to run out the clock on Trump. So what is next for the nation of Venezuela?
This left me thinking, running out the clock. The big question is Delcy Rodriguez just trying to kill time, doing just enough to appease the Trump administration? And the article goes on to cite a U.S. official that says there's a possibility we may see elections in Venezuela anywhere between 18 to 24 months. I checked the calendar. If we're talking about 24 months, that puts us in January of 2028. What does this mean? That's the end of President Donald Trump's second term in office. We don't know who the next president will be, what party will be in control in the U.S., and what their approach in regards to Venezuela will be. So, as you noted, so far, there's a lot of criticism in terms.
All right. Anthony says President Trump is not playing around, putting a stop to all the games, wants to create a stronger America. Thank you very much. Nicely said. The Sun says, never. I don't have the issue with Donald Trump. Okay. Stanley is here. Nice to have you here, Stanley. I dislike Trump's personality, but believe he's the man to straighten the world order. All right. Solid point. Thank you.
In terms of what they have been doing, what the interim government has been doing with respect to human rights, we have seen the release of 300 political prisoners so far, but hundreds more are still detained, and it's been slow. This past weekend, about 30 political prisoners were released. There's the incredible story of Oscar Castañeda. It was a very tough and also emotional moment to watch when he reunited with his family because he couldn't even recognize his family. His daughter was crying and just saying, "Dad, it's me, it's me." And clearly you can see the impact that this regime has had on this man.
Wow. And the Western Hemisphere looking a whole lot different right now than.
Okay, guys, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about Don Lemon. Let's see what's happening. And it may be some deep waters for Don Lemon, just to say the least, but let's get to it. And also, we're going to hear about this from the place where he used to work, and that's CNN. I know a lot of people do not like CNN, but folks, it is what it is.
Good evening. I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Let's get right to what America's talking about. An attack on the First Amendment. Tonight, freedom of the press is under siege after the arrests of independent journalists, former CNN anchor Don Lemon and Georgia Fort, for their coverage of an anti-ICE protest that erupted and interrupted a church service in St. Paul, Minnesota. Now, federal agents took them and two others into custody today at the direction of Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is calling their actions a coordinated attack. Now, the indictment alleged that they oppressed, threatened, and intimidated congregants and pastors, as they reported on the demonstration. But Lemon and Fort say that they were just doing their jobs as journalists. That is something that Lemon made very clear in his live stream tonight.
Now, keep in mind that Todd Blanche tried to paint the picture in the video we started off with, that Don Lemon was in cahoots with these protesters, right? And again, he's the Deputy Attorney General, and he's laying out the facts as though he'd been working on this case for many years, right?
I'm just here photographing.
Are you okay?
I'm not part of the group. I'm just here photographing. I'm a journalist. So we're here just chronicling and reporting. We're not part of the activists, but we're here just reporting on them.
Now, the White House was quick to pounce on Lemon's arrest. He is a longtime Trump critic, and they posted this image with a caption, "When life gives you lemons," along with chain emojis. Now, Lemon was in court today making an initial appearance, and he and Fort are both now vowing to fight.
Okay, it's my opinion after going through all of these trials, it will be hard, right? Because they've already started with the jury, so it's going to end with the jury, right? So will they be able to find 12 people to say that he's guilty based on what you know so far and the history of Don Lemon? Let's see what everybody in the audience is saying. Would you, if based on what you know so far, would you find him guilty or not guilty? Put it in the chat.
There is no more important time than right now, this very moment, for a free and independent media that shines a light on the truth and holds those in power accountable.
I should be protected under the First Amendment, just like all of the journalists who I've been advocating for too. Do we have a constitution? That is the pressing question that should be on the front of everyone's mind.
This is very troubling for a lot of people.
Wow, we're getting more guilties than what I imagined. I mean, he is a journalist. Wow.
People, Ellie Honig, look, I think there is a complicated criminal picture potentially for the protesters who staged this demonstration. But what do you think the picture is for the journalists who are there, and especially, Georgia Ford? You could see her microphone.
For all of the people that are saying guilty, I'm intrigued. What would you find him guilty of? Put it in the chat.
Was, labeled for her independent news organization. Don Lemon, he's a journalist that is known around the world. He was reporting live from the church. What do you make of that?
I think the cases against Don Lemon and Georgia Ford are doomed. And I will grant that I think the cases against the other people who interrupted that church service are valid. And I think they did.
Some people are saying that he was a journalist that got the boot. So you're not considering him a journalist, even though he's independent. And so that's why you're saying guilty, perhaps. Okay.
Commit those crimes. But the reason that the case against Don and Ms. Ford are different is because of the First Amendment. You cannot charge a journalist for doing their job. It is not a crime to cover a crime. And just to put it in context, let's just go through the sequence of how this charge came about. DOJ first goes to a magistrate judge who says, I am going to issue the criminal complaint.
Mark says no crime. They just don't like him.
Against 3 of the people who went into the church, but not the complaint against Don Lemon. Then DOJ says, well, let's appeal that up to the chief.
Caprello says being black in public. Oh, my.
District court judge who issues this scathing letter saying this is not even a thing.
This is a real problem. Most of the people are saying guilty for Don Lemon. I'm shocked by that. I'll have to rethink this whole situation. Wow.
You're asking me to do. I asked every other district court judge in this district, and they said they'd never even heard of it. You're rejected again. And then they get a grand jury.
Okay, guys, Ben makes a point. Ben Gleck says a journalist can't ride along on a bank robbery either. These people are morons. Okay, good point. Good point. Thank you for that illustration, Ben. I hope you stick around. I like your thinking, your analysis. That's pretty good. We're getting so many guilties in. I don't know what to think anymore. All right.
To indict today. So it's on the 3rd try. They come back with this indictment against Don Lemon. It is doomed. I'm telling you. It's the easiest.
Marty says separation of church and state doesn't exist. Okay.
Easiest prediction I've ever made.
And that appeals judge not only said, why are you coming to me with this, but also said.
Sorry, guys, but I want to read this one. Jersey says, read the FACE Act, which is the violation of the First Amendment, which guarantees the right to practice your religion. It was used against right to life group that demonstrate outside an abortion. Oh, my. Okay, so this is looking very serious. I'm shocked that so many people said guilty, though. Wow.
2 of the 5 protesters were not protesters at all. Instead, they were a journalist and his producer. There is no evidence that those 2 engaged in any criminal behavior or conspired to do so. Pete, the Trump administration is always pushing the envelope. But in this particular case, this is crossing a line. The Constitution is very clear. There is freedom of press in this nation, and that right is just as valid as all the others in the Constitution.
Okay, Pam is pushing back. She says, but they can cover the bank robbery. All right, they can cover the bank robbery. What do you say about that, Beck?
Why are they doing this? And shouldn't more people be speaking out about it?
I know you save unpopular opinions for Table for Five, which everyone should watch on Saturday mornings, but I'm going to start with an unpopular opinion.
Okay, guys, David says he disrupted a church service, not something journalists do. Okay, thank you.
Opinion, and that is calling Don Lemon a journalist is like calling AOC a free market capitalist. He is an activist. Look at his YouTube page. Here's a couple of titles of recent videos. 1, this is how to deal with ICE goons. 2, the viral MAGA idiot. 3, Don goes off.
Okay, Deborah says he's going to need a great attorney and he will be all right. Okay.
On MAGA and
so
ICE.
Is it your position
this is someone
that
who is not a journalist. He is an activist.
Is it your position that anybody who expresses opinions is not a journalist?
Well, even
is
if he
position?
is, even if you
no,
agree.
I mean, well, let's deal.
Cindy says guilty, straight to prison, straight like that. Wow.
Let's deal with the accusation that you're making that he is not a
I
journalist.
think he
it's
shed the
important
veneer of being a journalist a long time ago.
Because we have in the press a lot of different kinds of journalists. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the New York Post, they've got editorial boards where people are expressing opinions all the time. They're not journalists?
I think that Don Lemon is not a journalist.
But why?
But
is it because he's expressing? Is it because in his view, in your view, he's expressing an opinion?
If you believe that he is a journalist.
D. Nelson says this is more like a reporter conspiring to rob a bank. Wow.
But why?
I still think that he is wrong in this instance.
But you're not saying why. You're not saying why.
I just don't. I think he's an activist.
Well, but you just don't is not a reason.
When he's in the church and he's cheering them on. And he's saying, this is what you do. This is what you do. You have to make people uncomfortable.
That was his interpretation
of what they were doing. He was pointing out that people were scared and afraid and practically
That's what journalists do. They observe.
No, he was cheering it on.
How was he cheering it on if he's pointing out what's happening right in front of his face?
These people are scared and afraid, and that's why
were they not?
Protest.
He's interpreting what the protesters were doing. How was he cheering it on when he?
Guys, we have over 500 people. Could you please hit the like button, help us reach 100, and subscribe? Thank you.
He's telling you what's happening. That's part of what we do.
Did you see the parts where he was?
He also told them, "I'm
Did you see the
happy
parts
that
where
you're doing
he was
this. I'm glad that you're doing this."
Where he was interviewing the parishioners? Did you see those parts?
Yeah, and I also saw when the pastor asked him to leave, and he refused to leave for 7 minutes.
I didn't see a single moment where Don Lemon conspired with the others to further this crime. He was there reporting the entire time.
Advance.
So how did he further
He
that?
admitted that he knew about it.
That has nothing to do with
that journalists are often told in advance about protests? That's what happens.
So if you know someone is going to be shot and killed.
Audiehead says Gabby is definitely a liberal activist. Nice to have you here. Thanks.
Then you go to cover it. You're not completely.
Hold on.
If you cover it,
hold on.
Camera, yes.
Murder and protests are not the same thing.
I don't want us to. First of all, I don't even know that is established by the video. He said early on in the video that they were going to do some kind of protest. He was following along with them. Ellie, I mean, I'm curious in your professional opinion. Just taking in all of this discussion, how do you think that all of this factors into, was he a journalist, was he not? Can you just say that he's not a journalist because you don't like that he has an opinion? Does it matter if he was following them into something and he wasn't sure exactly what was going to transpire?
So the crucial legal line here is between journalist and participant, right? If you're a journalist, you can't get charged with this. If you cross the line into participant, then arguably you can. Now, I think with Don, look, you can say he's a biased journalist. Like, I will give you that. There's no question. But you can't say he's not a journalist because you think he's over the top or you disagree with his views any more than you can say, I don't know, is Tucker Carlson a journalist? I would say he is. He's biased as well. Clearly, Don is a journalist, but there's going to be some interesting cases. We saw some of this with January 6th because some of the people who went into the Capitol.
All right. Kennedy says he was very specific about the protest. He didn't say some kind of protest. Okay. Trouble in the air.
Tried to defend themselves by saying, well, I was live streaming to my 43 followers. That makes me a journalist. Now, we don't know exactly where the line is, but by any construction, Don is a journalist and should get the protection.
And it was just recently that Vice President J.D. Vance was saying that Nick Shirley should win a Pulitzer. Was that journalism to you?
I don't think it was.
Okay.
I'm pretty consistent on this. I don't think that he is. I don't think Tucker Carlson is either anymore.
Again, in this age, for example, we've had many different forms of what journalism looks like because the model has changed based off how the method is. So, yeah, you can say opinion columnist. That would mean every opinion columnist in this nation is not a journalist. I'm an opinion columnist for the...
Okay, guys. Audiehead says, Don said that he's a Christian, but he has a husband. Oh, my. Javier says, you're just trying to excuse him. All right.
Atlantic. Am I not a journalist? I perform journalistic action all the time.
So let me play with this exchange. We were just talking about this between Don and the pastor in the church.
What do you think of this? I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. But there were folks who will say, I have to take care of my flock. Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest. Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ. I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
So that was described in the indictment as Lemon and Fort approaching the pastor and largely surrounding him. They stood in close proximity to the pastor in an attempt to oppress and intimidate him and physically obstructed his freedom of movement while Lemon peppered him with questions.
Now, this is the same type of word games I saw at Sean Diddy Combs' trial, and it gets real sticky when they try to play these word games, and it doesn't always work out, but it's almost like they're trying to drum it up a bit, but we'll see what happens.
Promote the operation's message. First of all, the pastor stood there and spoke to him as if he was being interviewed by a journalist. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is that this seems to acknowledge that Don was asking questions. I don't know that standing next to someone in a gaggle, which is what that was, and asking them questions is oppressing and intimidating them.
Well, I think we did glaze over the events of what happened, and it was a very alarming thing for the First Amendment when it comes to freedom of religion.
And by the way, Don Lemon says that he's a Christian too, so it's odd that Christians aren't Christians.
I mean, there were children who were getting screamed at and being told your parents are Nazis and they're going to burn in hell. So that event,
I think the question is
right. So and
sure,
I do want to address that.
Did Don and Fort do any of those things?
The question is he a protester or a journalist? And the indictment obviously suggested that he posted himself at the main door. He prevented people from exiting, but ultimately
No, it does not say that.
The indictment
says that protesters did that. It named.
Okay, here's a good comment from C. Fisher. You cannot use your First Amendment rights to take away the First Amendment rights for someone else. That's crazy. All right, good comment.
The other people. It did not say that Don did that.
Look, I'm glad.
And they would. And by the way, if you or they want to make that claim, they would actually have to prove that. How are they going to prove that? That's up to them. That would be pretty evident.
The case is
right?
going to play out, but I do want to say I'm glad to hear that everyone is up in arms about journalism and freedom of the press, and I wish that we'd also heard this when James O'Keefe of Project Veritas was being raided by the FBI because he was investigating Ashley Biden. I wish we'd also heard this kind of outrage when...
Okay, guys, we're running tight on time. I want to cover a little bit about the Alexander brothers. This is a case that I'm covering in New York City, attending the courtroom. So I'll be in court all week as well as today. So I want to brief you guys on the case a bit so you understand what I'll be talking about.
The Alexander brothers appear to have it all.
From luxury mansions to parties in the Hamptons to professional accolades. But this Manhattan courtroom is now the center of a far different reality. Twin brothers Orrin and Alon, along with older brother Tal, now standing trial on federal sex trafficking charges and facing potentially life in prison if found guilty.
Alon, Tal, and Orrin Alexander had a meteoric rise to both power and fame. But according to federal prosecutors, that power and fame hid a much darker side.
In opening arguments today, prosecutors saying the men used their power and prestige to conspire to rape and drug dozens of women, including at least one minor.
Each of the brothers wore civilian clothes. We had seen them in court previously in jail garb, but they were granted permission by the judge to wear suits, open collars, and they sat at the defense tables with their lawyers. And there are a lot of defense lawyers who are there to help try to convince the jury that these brothers may have been womanizers, but they were not sex traffickers.
Prosecutor Madison Smizer saying the men masqueraded as...
That's the same argument they used for Sean Diddy Combs. Will it work here? We don't know.
Party boys, when they were really predators.
Prosecutors allege that the Alexander brothers used drugs, alcohol, and at times brute force to force young girls as young as 17, as well as young women, to have sex with them and rape them against their will.
The first witness to take the stand, an alleged victim claiming she was drugged and raped by Alon after an NBA Finals watch party at actor Zac Efron's apartment in 2012.
She went, and there she said she had a couple of drinks. She even tried ecstasy for the first time, and then later the whole group went to a club where she said a drink was spiked, and the next thing she remembered, waking up in Alon Alexander's bed with him raping her.
All three men have pleaded not guilty and denied the allegations. ABC News reached out to Zac Efron and did not hear back. The Alexander brothers' defense team firing back in their opening argument, saying while the men may have been promiscuous womanizers, they aren't criminals.
The defense, using crude language, saying that what occurred might make the jury cringe, but they're not here for the quote-unquote a-hole award.
Defense attorney Tenny Garrigo saying their behavior wasn't trafficking, it was...
Tenny Garrigos also represented Sean Diddy Combs. She was the second in command, so very similar here.
Dating and hooking up. Several members of the defense team have represented high-profile clients like Sean Combs.
The defense is painting a very...
According to Brian, we're up to 90 likes. Could we get 10 more to reach 100? That would be so awesome. Thank you, guys. And also, if you could subscribe if you like covering the news. Thank you.
Different story, one of buyer's remorse, something very similar to the Sean Combs trial, maybe because the defense is almost the exact same.
The Alexander brothers' arrest in December 2024 made national headlines.
3 major real estate moguls are facing federal charges.
Thank you, Jim Peacock, for subscribing to the channel. Thank you.
For enforced sex trafficking.
Arrested on federal sex trafficking charges. What authorities allege
Olon, Orrin, and Tal Alexander face charges in New York and Florida.
According to the indictment, federal prosecutors say the three men repeatedly and violently drugged and raped dozens of women, even...
All right, so we get the point. I'm not too happy about this case. I don't even know if I really want to cover it. It's almost like sitting through Sean Diddy Combs' case again. All you hear is craziness all day. But anyway, let's get to some politics. As far as the polls, how are things looking for the future? Are the Republicans going to take a big hit? Well, let's see what's happening.
This morning, there are Republicans across the country who are nervous. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis put this on Twitter. He said special elections are quirky and not necessarily projectable, a general election. That said, a swing of this magnitude is not something that can be dismissed. Republicans should be clear-eyed about the political environment heading into the mid.
Shout out to KC Darula. There we go. Nice to have you here. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Thank you.
What is he talking about? What has him and other Republicans so worried? CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton is here. And this is all about a special election for a Texas state Senate seat. around Fort Worth.
That's exactly right. Texas 9, because what happened in Texas 9, it didn't just swing to the left, it took a rocket ship to the left. My goodness gracious, the Texas 9 Senate District election marches. This was a district that Donald Trump won by 17 points in 2024. The Democratic candidate in the special election on Saturday, won it by 14 points. That's an
Houston, we have a problem.
over 30-point shift to the left. Any Republican, unlike Ron DeSantis, who doesn't take this seriously, they should realize that this is very perilous. They ignore this result at their own peril. Ron DeSantis is right to say, hey.
Okay, Brian says, MAGA, 30-point swing. That's a big problem.
Hey, special elections can be quirky, but this ain't no quirk.
Congressman Pete Sessions from Texas basically told me, he said, no Democrat should ever win in North Texas like this. Although he also said, there was an ice storm, 31 points. That's not an ice storm.
No.
I'm starting to feel like Jasmine Crockett has a chance of winning her Senate seat. Let's see what happens.
That ain't no ice storm. If you ignore this, you're going to ice yourself out of a majority come the midterm.
All right, when we look at these special elections, and this is something you and I talk about a lot and look at very closely in between the federal elections, what can they tell us?
Okay, so, you see this 31-point shift to the left, right? If this were just one election, that would be one thing. But it's the slew of special elections that together paint a picture, and it's a picture that Democrats should love and a picture that Republicans should be really worried about. Because what are we talking about here? Okay, the average 2025, 26 special election, Democrats are doing, get this, 12 points better. 12 points better than Kamala Harris did in 2024. That was a state special election that happened in Texas on Saturday. If you look at the federal special elections, this 12 points is actually north of 15 points.
Democrats have already said if they win big, the first order of business will be to impeach Donald Trump. What do you say?
On average, I was looking back through the history books. This looks a whole heck of a lot like what we saw during the 2017-2018 cycle, where you saw these Democrats outperforming how Hillary Clinton did in 2016. And what did it forecast? It forecast a net gain of 40 seats for Democrats. And I remember back in Pennsylvania, remember there was that Southwestern, that was a congressional special election seat, but that was one in which the Democratic candidate was able to actually win in a deeply red Republican district. And that, of course, foretold big Democratic gains come 2018.
Foretells how? I mean, how frequently do these special elections foretell what happens in the midterms?
Okay, so you see this 12-point overperformance. You see this 31-point overperformance. But that don't mean nothing if it ain't forecastable to the midterm elections. So what are we looking at here? Well, take a look at special elections since all the way back in the 2005-2006 cycle. 5 out of 5 times the party that outperforms in the special elections goes on to win the U.S. House of Representatives. And this, of course, all paints a picture, right? Texas 9, the special elections, the history of special elections, in which Democrats look like they're in the catbird seat to take back the
Brian says J.D. Vance is like 6-month-old mayonnaise in the fridge. Wow.
U.S. House come 2026 November.
Which is why Ron DeSantis and others are nervous this morning. Harry,
they should be.
Thank you very much. Kate.
Harry, will you put your first slide?
All right. Looks like there's trouble in the air, and we know what's going to happen if the Democrats win big. Donald Trump might be impeached, and they also want to lock him up while they're at it. Well, we'll have to see what happens, but if things swing, can you only imagine? You see how things are today. It's going to get really crazy if the Democrats win this year in November. It's going to be crazy in this country. Donald Trump has already said that a sitting president, if he goes to war, does not have to have an election. I have it on the shorts if you guys want to go check it out. So maybe he's considering just staying in office, forget leaving. He'll just run the country for the rest of his life. A lot of people come into the chat and they say Trump forever. They love Trump, and Elon Musk is trying to extend life. So maybe we can have Donald Trump another 100 years, right? All right, guys, thank you for tuning in today. We covered a lot of ground. But it looks like things are shaky as this year goes on. And if the Democrats win, my, oh my, it's going to be trouble in paradise, especially with the Republicans winning so big recently, it almost looks impossible for Democrats to win. But you never know, especially it's very hard for a sitting president for his party to do well during the midterm elections. That's a known fact. So, according to statistics, Democrats are due to win big in November. And if that happens, it's going to be something to behold. But definitely, we'll be covering it here on Watching the World. Definitely, you guys can come in every day to have our discussions. We had a lot of going back and forth today, but I don't see anybody getting too crazy, especially to the point that we have to go out into the street and try to turn this into a violent situation. So thank you guys for having a meeting of the minds and having an open discussion. But I'm shocked that everybody was basically saying to lock Don Lemon up. I'm not too happy about that. I'm shocked that a lot of people said he should be found guilty. I find that something to think about. T. Perry says the amount of chaos is ridiculous right now. It would only get worse, trust and believe, if the Democrats take back over the government in November. Believe that. Believe it. The party would be over for the Republicans indeed, but the fight back would be insane. We'd probably see a fight that we haven't seen before. Casey, the ruler, says Teflon Don. I think he's the toughest guy we've seen in quite some time. They'll be talking about Donald Trump forever. Believe that. But anyway, Lucas Ward says Don will get a fine at most. Okay. Well, that's what history tells us. We haven't seen him take any major hit. Again, I attended his trial here in New York City where he received 34 felonies, and within 2 months he won. He became president for the second time around, and he received those 34 felonies in his home state. Isn't that something to think about? Brian says, thank you, chat, for the respect. Muchly appreciated. Okay. Junior Johnny says, two-party system is a scam, and y'all are falling for the bullshit. All right. Thank you for your comment as well. Let's see. Today is Monday. We don't have a show tonight, but we'll be back tomorrow. I'll be at the Alexander trial, so I'll briefly be on at noon. But we will have news at noon again on Wednesday. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for all the participation. I am considering doing a deep dive on Donald Trump and the Epstein files. And did you guys hear what Nicki Minaj was saying about Jay-Z last night? Did you see that? She's calling him a PDF in all of these posts. Like, what's really happening? She posted a picture of him and his alleged son. She posted pictures of Jay-Z and Aaliyah. Like, this world is really chaotic. Jay-Z must be sitting in a hot seat right now, considering all of the information that Nicki Minaj, a person who has become very close and I wouldn't say intimate, but very close to the president. And now that she has the eye pretty much of everybody in America, not everybody, but for the most part, now she's taking shots at none other than Jay-Z. So I can imagine the strain that must present, but we'll see how the story unfolds and see what happens with these individuals. We see Daniel Price is in the building. Nice to have you here. Thank you for your participation as well. So we'll keep our ears to the door for Don Lemon to see what happens. But I'm a little bit shocked. I'm still puzzled by, I thought people would be more understanding in regards to Don Lemon because he is a journalist. But apparently, when it comes to religion, you must respect it 100%, or you might end up in a jail cell. And I'm pretty sure that's where Don Lemon was for at least for one night, enough that a man would not want to go back. So let's see what happens. Caprello says Jay-Z is black excellence. All right. but he's taken on a lot of heat from Nicki Minaj because of being mentioned in the Epstein files. Him and other rappers are mentioned in the Epstein files. Even some female singers are mentioned in the Epstein files. Epstein had his tentacles throughout the world, pretty much in politics, rappers, singers, art, you name it. And now we understand why people are saying that he had a major play when it comes to Israel and all these other different, conspiracy theories that we hear floating around. Cato, subscribe. Shout out to Cato Mills. Cato Mills, thank you for subscribing to the channel. Look forward to having you back. We do this every day at noon, unless I'm in court, which I will be in court tomorrow. And that's going to be a tough case. I never like sitting in these trials where they're talking about how they're abusing people, and it's quite terrible. So I might go here and there, but no way I could sit through that trial every day. But I'll keep my eyes and ears on it enough to let you know what's happening. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We're going to call it a day now. I really do appreciate all of the watchers. Thank you to Stella for holding us down as well. It's a great thing. Also, New Jersey, and thank you so much. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kennedy, for being the big deal. We'll call you the big deal. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay warm if you're in a cold place. Just so you know, guys, I'm going to be, and I always get the name. I'm going to cover Skid Row in LA because Donald Trump is trying to clean it up. So I want to do a documentary on Skid Row before it shuts down. So this year for my birthday, which is coming up, I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers before my birthday next weekend. But as a part of my birthday this year, I want to go do a documentary on Skid Row. I think it's going to be amazing. So look out for that. I'll get a chance it'll be my first time in LA. I've been to San Diego. I've been to Las Vegas. I've never been to LA. So I'll be reporting from LA. I think it'll be a great thing. Thank you and have a great day. And damn it, I'll close with your statement. God bless Trump. All right. You guys have a good night.
Different voices, but the same song. Building a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the thing remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world share in love and light. Painting the night, united we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. The colors of harmony painting the night, united we